We lost tens of thousands of pounds.
Wow.
And I nearly went bankrupt. So that triggered a lot of stress. So anytime I felt bad or every time I went through a bad patch, obviously there was a lot of tension, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. So I ended up in pornography, and that became worse and worse and worse and worse. Until at points it's so bad I began to cry and I began to look for help. One day my mom just rang me from Ghana and my sister just died suddenly. And I fell down the stairs, I broke my back, there was blood everywhere, it was a mess. My wife was screaming, my kids were screaming. I felt that this is a warning, I need to get this book out as soon as possible.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host, and our guest this week is a best-selling author. He's written the book Pay the Price. He's a pharmacist by training, and he's also a sought-after international speaker and a sort of a business owner, a global business owner, and I'm sure he'll tell us a bit more about that later. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind welcoming with me, my friend, someone I went to school with as well, actually, Mr. Stephen Adjei. Stephen, you're welcome to Against All Odds.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'm really privileged to be here, and I see what you guys are doing. I see the quality of it, and I feel really privileged to be here. Thank you so much.
I know. We go back a long way.
Long way, man.
Long way. And actually, I haven't seen you in person for like what, 30 years?
Yeah, since 1988. It's a long time, man.
That is a long time.
Yeah.
But you haven't changed much.
Well, I hope so. You still look handsome.
Still looking good.
You still look handsome. You still look great. So yeah, hopefully I look okay. Not too bad.
You're looking great.
Oh, thank you.
You're looking great. Obviously, I've seen your pictures on the back of the book and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Well, so just to dive straight into this, tell us a bit about your background and how you came to write this book, because what I've gathered is that you wrote this book after you had a terrible, you almost died, literally, and you had a light bulb moment, and it was like, I've got to do this, and I've got to do this now, and we see the results. I mean, this is like number one on the bookshelves and Waterstones and all the main, it's very uncommon for a person of color to write a book. And the book has international, sort of broad appeal across different demographics. And the evidence speaks for itself. So just tell us a bit about your story. Yeah,
so basically I qualified as a pharmacist from TIK, obviously in Ghana, and I came over here to practice. I started practicing and I was doing it for about 4 years. After the fourth year, I began to feel an itch that I had something more I needed to do. I didn't quite know what it was, but ever since even in Ghana, I love things about business, leadership, mindset. That's always been my thing. So I went to Warwick. We are one of the best in the country, best in the world actually. So I got an MBA. And it was in the third year of my MBA that I realized, actually, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and start a business. So a colleague of mine called Abhinav, he's Indian. We started a business called Blue Cloud, which was meant to basically incubate companies from Africa and get them to get some investments, some money to really scale up. So things went really well the first 3 or 4 years. We did some business in Kenya, we did some business in Angola, Ghana, Nigeria, Botswana, South Africa. Things were really, really well. We held a conference every year to highlight African entrepreneurs. But we went into Angola and we signed a deal for this $60 million hospital. It was going to be massive in Angola. But there were some issues and we got duped really badly. We lost tens of thousands of pounds.
Wow.
And I nearly went bankrupt. I actually go bankrupt. So that triggered a lot of stress. I also made some bad decisions, some bad moral decisions, which I'll talk to you about later. And that also got me to, I also had epilepsy. I started having fits through the stress of it all. I crashed 2 cars. I had a brand new car that I was driving. I had a fit in the car. I crashed it. A year later, had another fit, and I crashed it as well. So we crashed 2 cars. I couldn't drive. And then one day, my mom just rang me from Ghana, and my sister just died suddenly. So this happened in about a year or two, about a year, yeah. So I didn't know what to do. The company had gone. We are still trying to revive it. Like, well, it was basically gone. So, but I'd been writing stuff in my journal for years, and I felt strongly that I needed to write a book. I didn't have the confidence to write it because obviously you look at these business books, ones that I saw in business school, and the ones that I'd read, these were really big guys, and there was no black guy, obviously apart from Stephen Bartlett, but there was no black guy in the UK that had written a mainstream business book. So I didn't have the confidence to do it. I thought there's no way I could do this. But one day I was upstairs, and I had a massive epileptic fit upstairs, and I fell down the stairs and broke my back. There was blood everywhere. It was a mess. My wife was screaming. My kids were screaming. But I don't know what it was, a trance, or I don't know what it was, but I felt that this is a warning. I need to get this book out as soon as possible. So I got up, dressed my wounds. My wife thought I was crazy because she was saying I should go to the hospital. But we did some quick checks. Nothing was broken, but I was really injured. I mean, I've got scars on my back. It was really bad. So I dressed my wounds, and the next day I sat down, and within 4 months the book was done. Obviously, he'd been breathing. He'd been in me for a long time. But the next challenge was to get a publisher, and because I was obviously a person of color, there were so many books on entrepreneurship. It took me almost 3 to 5 months to get a publisher, and that was from the US. All the guys in the UK turned me down.
Really?
And so I got turned down so many times by so many publishers. Finally, I got taken on by these guys in the US. That's what the book came out about.
Well, that's an amazing story, and the fact that you didn't let the challenge and the stress of what you had been through and its effect on its health prevent you from sharing this with the world. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but I don't even know where the title came from, the Pay the Price, because a lot of people who talk about things and they never, it just stays in the realm of talk. But for anything to happen, there is a price that has to be paid. And for those of you who get the book, it has a picture at the front of a ladder, and the first rung of the ladder is of wood, and then the next one is barbed wire, and then the next one's a knife, the next one's a rake. Can you imagine climbing a ladder and stepping on the barbed wire and a knife and a rake? I mean, what are these things symbolic of, Stephen? Tell us.
The thing is, when I was in Warwick, we were taught about entrepreneurship, and it seemed to us when we finished, we had this tinted eyes that you just start a business, put in the formula, you have a purpose, passion, and then everything goes well. And all the guys that we read about, Steve Jobs and all these guys that we know as Charles Branson, all these guys that we know as Richard Branson, who we know as entrepreneurs, didn't see that side of it. But I think it's 90% of entrepreneurs fail. It's a known fact. And the mental issues and stuff that go in divorce and stuff that goes in entrepreneurship. And I only found this out afterwards. I didn't realize this at all. I mean, the failure rate, especially in Africa, in Ghana, 75% of entrepreneurs fail in the first year. It's 72% in Nigeria. I mean, so in Africa, it's even worse. It's a very high failure rate. So I wanted to give a picture to the world of what to expect, and what kept me going. I mean, 3 things kept me going, which I'll talk about later. But there are 3 things that keep you going, and if you don't have those things in place, then it's likely that you will fail. And most of the people that I spoke to and interviewed, I did a lot of interviews for the book, and that has succeeded. And those that have failed, you could see a theme running through, and that's what I wanted to highlight.
If you're enjoying this episode, I'd like you to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification, and also like, share, and comment. Now let's get back to this episode. Yeah, it's quite interesting that you talk about failure. I mean, I've had my own share of failure in businesses. The very first business I went into a dry cleaning business. It was a colossal. I mean, I had this dream I was going to have a chain of dry cleaning businesses all across the UK and all that. And I failed. I lost a lot of money. I lost, a couple of $100,000. And that hurt. But I would say that I learned a lot as well. Yeah. I learned a lot. 100%. So maybe tell us a bit about some of the experiences that failure teaches you. I mean, what does failure teach you? And how does a person who's failed in an application to get to medical school, failed in a job interview, how do they pick themselves up, and move on from there?
Yeah, so in the book, I speak about 3 phases, okay? And the first phase, which I call the honeymoon phase.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that is crucial, okay? And the honeymoon phase is made up of you as the person, your passion, and your purpose, okay? So you talk about someone who's going to medical school, okay? If you get let down the first time, you come back to your honeymoon period, okay? Now, when I went through all these issues with my the failure and the stuff I went through, it had a very bad effect on my marriage. So we had to go through counseling.
Okay.
So when we went through counseling, the first thing the counselor asked us is that, do you remember the day you got married? Okay, and that took us back to our honeymoon. When we were walking in streets of Usu, going to buy ice cream hand in hand, kissing each other all the time, and that reminded us, So that honeymoon period was what sustained the marriage, because when the counselor asked that question, my wife and I looked at each other. Okay. And we remembered, we did really have a good time in Usu at Francine's those days, and so that secured us. Made us know that even though we had gone through all this hustle and she supported me 100%, and she took us her fair share of the pain. That question of, do you remember your honeymoon, was what actually saved the marriage. Because we went back and realized actually things that happened along the line, but that love that got us together was real. Yeah, and the same thing for business. Okay, so if you should know who you are, but you have self-awareness of who you are, which I talk about identity, and you should know why you're doing these things, okay, and then you should have a passion for it, okay. So for a medical school guy, you should know that you're a people person, you want to help the world, you want to contribute something to the world. So that's you as a person, your purpose. You want to do that through being a doctor. And you have the passion for the job. You really, you wake up, you go to bed thinking about being a doctor. You wake up in the morning thinking about being a doctor. If you have these 3 things in place, and they're really a strong foundation, when you get rejected by medical school, you come back to that honeymoon phase. And actually, that's repeated throughout everything in the Bible. It's repeated throughout. Yeah, God always reminds people of the honeymoon phase. It's repeated throughout Scripture, throughout marriages, everything. There's a honeymoon phase which you have to go through. I mean, for me, it was work, about business. It was the fact that I knew that I loved Africa. It was the fact that I knew I had a passion for Africa. Whenever I travel to Kenya or Nigeria, there's a joy that comes within me when I'm in the midst of Africa. So that what I knew was strong. Yeah. So the failures didn't really affect that inner core of who I was. But yeah, it did hurt. I mean, it did hurt a lot. And I talk about pain and the different kinds of pain in the book, and how to navigate that kind of pain. But yeah, it did hurt. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, you spoke about some challenges as well that you had in terms of some moral issues and all that as well. Do you want to just expand on that?
Yeah. So I developed a bad habit of pornography, which I'm quite open about, because I realized that a lot of men struggle with that. So anytime I felt bad, or every time I went through a bad patch, okay, obviously there was a lot of tension, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. And I wasn't very good at sharing with my wife how I felt. So I ended up in pornography, and that became worse and worse and worse and worse, until at points it's so bad. I began to cry, and I began to look for help. And that called Covenant Eyes that I installed on my computer, and that sent a message to my brother every time I went on pornography. So that do you understand? So that stopped it. Okay. But it was a good thing that happened, because I was able to look at the kinds of pain that I went through and actually differentiate them into 4 kinds of pain. Sometimes when you feel pain, the pain manifests as you just feel uncomfortable, you just feel pain. But actually, there are 4 kinds of pain that entrepreneurs go through. And if you're able to decipher and identify those 4 kinds of pain, they're all different, and they all demand a different response. But we tend to lump them all as one, and that's what takes us down the wrong path.
And You also talk quite interestingly about the fact that when people are looking at businesses, you need to look at scalability. And that's a big problem amongst sort of people, business owners from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic demographic. We tend to have one corner shop, one little business somewhere, but the business is not scalable. And I found that quite profound because it's my thinking as well. I always ask myself, can this thing grow? I mean, when we started this podcast earlier on, some months ago, one of the things I asked my team was, can this thing grow? Can it scale? Can we grow our subscriber base? Can this thing be international? Can this thing sort of have an impact, across the world? And it ticked all those boxes, and that's kind of why we're doing it. So can you just tell us a bit about the importance of scalability?
Yeah, it's crucial, obviously. And I'm writing my second book on actually that topic. So there are three kinds of scalability, and that's what I think we don't realize as Africans, okay? So there are three kinds. I call them personal scalability, and then personnel scalability, and then place scalability. When we read books or we listen to podcasts or stuff on YouTube, people always talk about the place, the fact that you need to scale your shop, you need to scale your business. Mind, it starts from you as a person, okay? You will only grow to the level, or your business will only grow to your level, okay? If you want to scale anything at all, it starts with scaling yourself up, okay? Developing a mindset of scalability. It means that, okay, right, to scale, to have 3 or 4 or 5 shops, that demands a different mentality. I should be able to learn how to delegate, for instance. I should be able to learn how to trust people to do things the way I want them to be done. I should be able to have a big mindset. When you have a small shop, you have what you call a patriarchal thing. You're the father. Everybody comes to you. When there's a problem, they ring you at home and you sort it out. At 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock at night, or at 10 o'clock at night, something goes wrong. The alarm bell goes off.
The burglary is a fire.
You have to run there. Okay. So that's a kind of a patriarchal. It's like a father, isn't it, to the business? Once you start going between 3, 4, 5 shops, there needs to be a mindset shift.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of us struggle. Okay. You need to get that mindset. Once you get that mindset shift from a patriarchal kind of thing to more of a business owner, it becomes more easier to trust people, because now you have to employ another guy to man another shop. You have to employ another person to man another shop. You need to expand your base. You need to diversify. All these things come from a mindset. Okay, so I always put what I call personal scalability first. You need to read more, begin to identify more with people that are of your caliber, and all that stuff. So once that is in place, then you move to what I call personnel scalability.
Okay.
You begin to train people, your staff around you, your main core, on how to think like how you become. Because people always become like you. You tend to breed your own. Do you understand? So if you have a small mindset, people around you also have that small mindset. So after you're able to deal with yourself and get yourself into that state where you want to scale, then you can talk about you can now train people. After you've trained your people, and then you begin to look at place, which is your business. Okay. So many people try and say, "Oh, I want to scale," and they're going to open a new shop. They're going to open a new thing, but they haven't gotten rid of that personal scalability. They haven't really thought about it. So when something goes wrong, they still want to go and fix that thing on the 3rd shop, the 4th shop. You can't do that. Okay, and that's because you haven't got yourself into a mindset of moving from a father, a patriarchal thing, to actually being a proper leader. You have to move from a manager to becoming a leader. And that's the shift where we struggle, because we find it difficult to trust other people. We find it difficult to delegate. And until you do that, it's very tough to scale.
So would you say that people need to get outside help, perhaps, to systemize their businesses as well? Maybe use CCTV cameras, have certain, procedure manuals in place that if this happens, you call this person, here's what to do. Do you think that's, and also, I mean, like, how does this, as a normal, something when you're running a business, you're so much into it. I remember when I ran a small dry cleaning business, I was the delivery driver. I'll do the pickups, I'll do the ironing in the shop. I'll do the laundry, I'd do the cashing up. I'll do the promotional stuff, going door to door, knocking on doors, posting flyers. And in the midst of all that, it's very difficult to see the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Because you're so much in the thick of things that it's difficult to step back and have what I call the 36,000 feet above view. Because 36,000, I love traveling a lot, 36,000 above sea level up there, everything looks small. Your so-called big business, it's tiny, like a drop. But when you're in the thick of it, you can easily get so overwhelmed. You've got to pay bills, you've got to pay VAT, you've got to pay staff. I remember the first time I hired someone, and again, I'm a small business owner, and I hadn't really put structures in place. And this lady had come to join her husband, who was studying in the UK. And at the end of the month, I kind of looked, and I gave her £800, cash. I just gave it to her, and she looked at me and said, "What is this for?"
Oh God, what is this for?
What is this? Oh my goodness!
That's funny. What is this for?
Yeah. Anyway, so for me, that was a big learning experience because in terms of the person's, I didn't know what the person had been expecting, but I thought because the person was picked up, dropped home, given lunch money and everything, and I felt £200 a week was a fair wage, but obviously it wasn't.
No.
Anyway, so you talk about trusting people. But people can also let you down.
Yeah.
People can let you down big time. How do you learn to trust people, especially when you've been let down?
Yeah, that's the risk that we take. But I think when we sometimes, and this is particularly true for the African diaspora, or Africans in general, there are two things that we need to look at. The first thing that you need to look at, when I'm interviewing people, I've done lots of interviews for businesses, and the first thing you need to look at is the person's character. Okay, you need to take the first. If there's no character, there's no competence. Okay, they need to have the character first in place. Okay, so I've interviewed lots of people. I've interviewed people from Kurdistan, India, and the first time we look for is the person's character. We do research about the person. You ask the person some basic questions, and you find the person's character. And then from there you can move to the competence. We sometimes get it the other way around. We look for competence first, and then go for character. But you always need to look for the person's character first. And if the person's character is good, you can never be 100%. Obviously.
And when you say character, what exactly do you mean? Just break it down.
Yeah, is the person trustworthy?
Okay.
What's the person's vision for the future? That's a big one. How does the person fare around money? What have they done in the past that you feel that they can? Because a past is most often is a predictor of the future. So what have they done in the past? Okay, and it goes about asking people around them as well. We just sort of get a person around, talk to them, and then leave it. But sometimes the people around them also can give a good picture. So it means that what's the person's inner core? What do they actually believe? What is it that they really believe? And once that is settled, and then you can move to the competence factor, and then from competence you move to compassion. So compassion is how do they treat people? So actually it's character first, compassion next, and then competence. So those are the three things that you look at. Many times some people do the character and forget the competence. Some people do the compassion and forget the competence. Those three things go hand in hand. The person should have a good sense of have integrity, should love to treat people well, and then should be good at what they do. Competence can be trained. If the person has an underlying core, that core willingness,
it can be developed.
It can be developed.
Yeah.
Character cannot. Okay. If the person is like a bad apple tree, if the person has a bad character, then automatically
it's intrinsic. It's in them.
It's gone. And then we don't. And sometimes we want to hire friends or relatives, so without really delving into the fact that actually is this person right for the job, and then do have the character and the stuff. And I agree with you with the systems. That's another thing that people don't put in place. Systems are crucial. They need to have systems which you can scale across your different businesses, and people know what the systems are. But the danger with systems as well, especially in the age we are in now, things are moving so fast. But if you put systems in place and they're very rigid, and you tend to miss the changes that happen in the world, and then that
you can be left behind.
Yeah. So there must be a bit of flexibility with your systems, but they should still be rigid enough so they can be replicated across your businesses. I'm not sure that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a good response. So you talk about competence as well. People need to be competent at what they do, right? And it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, right? I was at a careers fair last week, the BYP career fair at the Business Design Center in Islington. And I spoke to quite a number of people, young people out there, and quite a recurring theme as a pain point was the fact that how do we get we managed to get in on entry level, but we stay there. We can't seem to progress. How does a person gain the competence if they're not given that opportunity to lead meetings, lead projects, manage people, and all that? I mean, my personal experience, is working in the cities. I mean, it was like initially it was like, we can't trust you to manage people, but I've been managing people for a long time. So how does a person overcome that challenge where you're not being given an opportunity to develop, you're not being given an opportunity to prove yourself, to learn, and to demonstrate competency?
Yeah, so this is two ways. Okay, so the first thing I'll say is that it comes from the leader. Okay, so I talked about personal scalability earlier. Okay, if the leader is insecure, the leader feels that this guy is just going to come and replace me, and the person they're not secure in their identity, then they're not going to be able to delegate and give people the chance that they need to be able to. So that's the first part of it. As a leader, or as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you should work on yourself and know that the person who is, if you train someone to be like you, or even better than you, that's a feather in your cap. You've done well. I'll give a typical example. So, in the business where I'm in the pharmacy, or as a pharmacist, we took on the tough challenge of vaccinating one from Plymouth. There was no pharmacy doing it. We said we'll go for it. So we vaccinated a lot of people. We said we'll do it for COVID. There was nobody doing it. So I was initially vaccinating, doing all the vaccinations, but they got to a point where the demand was so high I couldn't do it. Okay, so I trained two of my staff to be able to do that. Okay, so when I was training them, I was scared. I think, oh wow, these people are going to train. They're going to get better at me, and they got better than I was after a point. But I had to work on myself to be proud that I've been able to train people, and now they've done over 50,000 vaccinations. And they're much better, and people come year after year looking for them. And sometimes, as a leader, I need to be aware and be secure in myself enough to know that yes, I've trained these people; they're better than me. But actually, what's happening? What you talk about the 36,000 thing. Actually, what's happening? The whole business is benefiting. The people that you've trained are benefiting from more confidence. They're benefiting from the fact that they've learned more skills, and you are benefiting because the people trust you more because you give them those skills, and the whole business is working. It's getting better. It's getting more profitable. If you're able to go beyond that narrow mindset to look at the broader picture, then you'll do that. From the point of view of the employee or the people that are there, it's a bit more difficult when you're under somebody who doesn't want to give you a chance. There are two choices in that case. One is that you develop your skills by yourself. There's so much information out there now. Buy your own books and do your own stuff. And once you are doing that, your competence will increase to the point where if the leader doesn't want you, you can go somewhere else. So you still have a responsibility. Some people say that, oh, my boss is toxic. My boss doesn't do that. My boss doesn't do that. You might not be in a position to leave the company at that point because you need the money to pay your bills, to look after your kids. So what you should do then is you begin to take on the responsibility yourself of gaining competence. You study, you read books, you go to, like you said, you went to a jobs fair. Your spare time, you wake up early in the morning. You do stuff. You get to a point where your competence rises beyond the company. People want you, and you can move. The people are always looking for skills. So that's how I would say.
So there's this word entrepreneur, okay, where I think what it means effectively is that you got to see yourself as a business, okay, and ask yourself, what products or services am I providing? Who's my customer? What are my price points? How am I adding value? And it's a way of thinking. If you see yourself as part of a supply chain, then you kind of organize your life, accordingly. what can you tell us about that kind of, how people can develop that way of thinking?
You mentioned the word value, which for me is absolutely crucial. Okay, what value am I providing for the person? Now, if you're a barber, let's say you're a barber, you want to open your own barber shop. What value am I providing to the person you're cutting their hair? You have 45 minutes with the person that you're cutting their hair. That's a time for you to chat to the person, instill value. So it's the value that you're giving, the value position, and you need to go beyond thinking about yourself. What profit for myself? It's adding value. So for me, when I become an entrepreneur, I place a lot of emphasis on the value to the customer. If somebody comes to the pharmacy and they want to buy some medication or they want a prescription, you don't just hand them the prescription and they go. You create value. You find out about their names. What more can I do to help? When we're doing work in Africa, we met a few health businesses. Same thing. What can I do to add value to them? The key is value, and that's what you spoke about. So it's developing your mindset away from what can I get for myself, and that's a lot of things that Africans do that puts them not in a good situation. You need to think of the customer that you are doing. I call it customer agility. You need to look at every customer, and now we're living in a world where. In the 70s and 80s, there were just top-down managements. You could tell people what to do, and they'll just do it. Now we're moving to an era of personalization. Every person that comes in is a potential customer, and every person should treat them differently. And that means getting to know who they are. And that's one thing that we don't do. Everybody works to the shop. We assume they want something. Say you're in a corner shop selling Ghanaian food. Okay. Now when you get a regular customer coming in, you need to go beyond just selling them. What are their preferences? What do they want? What kind of food do they like? If they don't have it in stock, are you able to go and order it for them? Once something happened when I was buying flowers for my wife for her birthday. I went to this flower shop. My wife likes a particular kind of the flower shop didn't have it. She said to me, "Oh, if you go just down the road there, that woman there sells flowers, and they have just what you need." I found that quite shocking. But the mindset of the entrepreneur was, I need to provide value for this customer. So guess what? Next time I wanted flowers, I went to her again. Next time I wanted plants, I went to her because I thought, this one really cares for me such that she's even willing to go to the point of sending me down somewhere else where she couldn't get it. Or trying her best. So it's the value. And you cannot get beyond that. If you don't provide value for your customers, they'll leave.
Stephen, so another thing is, would you say that it's more advisable for people to validate their entrepreneurial concept before they go into it, full scale? And what do I mean by validate it? In terms of maybe get someone to think through it, and criticize it, and look at things from a different perspective. Because oftentimes an entrepreneur might have a certain picture in their minds as to this thing that they're going to do to change the whole world, but perhaps it's not very practical, and they haven't thought about certain things. Would you say that people need to filter their entrepreneurial sort of pursuits or interests through, like I said, pass them through a filter just to make sure that it's valid? Because a lot of people go into things and they lose a lot of money. A lot of people went into crypto, they lost a lot of money. A lot of people went into this, they lost a lot of money. A lot of people also hear, oh, somebody's doing this, so I'm going to go into this, right? And you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the competence, you don't have the connections, you don't have the network. And guess what? You lose a ton of money. Right, because you didn't know you're playing a game that you knew nothing about. 100%. Would you say that people need to filter, or people should just be allowed to? I've gone on various entrepreneurial journeys, and like I said, I've learned very quickly. I'm a very quick learner, about what not to do next time. Okay, so next time I'm not going to hire somebody without agreeing a wage.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so would you say that it's best to pre-think these things, or just learn them as you go along and try and figure it out?
Yeah, so for me it's a combination of both, and it's two things I want to talk about here. The first thing is, that's why I go back to the honeymoon phase. Okay, you should only do something that, when it comes to value, you should know who you are and what you are good at, self-awareness, your identity, and then you should have a purpose. Why am I doing this? And you should have a passion. Okay, those two things are fundamental. Okay, now they don't guarantee success. Obviously, they don't guarantee success because I feel hard anyway. They don't guarantee success, but at least they know you know that even if your business doesn't work, there's a concept which I call adjacency, which means that even if you go into a different business, you should have learned skills in your previous business that will help you into your new business. Okay, and I call that adjacency. Okay, so if you don't have adjacency, and then you go into a different, you're probably going to fail. Okay, so for me, for instance, I know that healthcare is my thing. I know I love writing. Okay, I know that over the years I've judged hundreds of businesses for Blue Cloud. Okay, I was recently called to be a judge for one of the biggest award ceremonies in the UK called the Signature Awards. Okay, now when the guy called me to do it, I was scared. I thought, there's no way I can be a judge. But I looked back at what I'd done over the past, and I had people to encourage me, someone like Charles and stuff. So you need people to do that, but also you have to have some agency. I knew that I'd judged a lot of companies for my business, so I knew I had the capacity to do this. So if you're going to crypto, if you're going into whatever it is you're into, you have the agency. You're talking about connections, competence, and skills. Your agency. You should have something in your previous life. It may be indirect, but it's something that you should have that should be able to give you success in the new venture you're going into. Okay, you can't just jump. I mean, if somebody called me to perform music for the Queen in Buckingham Palace, there's no way I could do that. I don't have any adjacency. There's nothing in my previous skills.
Okay,
I have no connections. I have nothing there that can enable me to go into a different role.
Okay.
So even if now I failed in Blue Cloud, yes, and things went really bad, but I learned enough to be able to now to be a judge. I learned enough now to be able to be a mentor because I have adjacency from what I've done before, you know. And that's what prevents people from just going after every fad that comes along. If you have your honeymoon phase in place and you have adjacency, then you're more likely to succeed in your next venture. If you don't have a honeymoon phase, you don't have any adjacency, then you will fail. So going back to cryptocurrency, one, are you good with money? Are you good with money in your past jobs that you have? Have you ever handled money? Two, what's your purpose? Are you going to crypto just to make money, or you are going there to make some sort of difference? Three, do you have a passion for crypto? Do you have a passion for how money works? All that. That's your honeymoon period. Adjacency. Have you done anything at all in your past that is linking you to doing crypto? Have you worked in a city? Have you dealt with people's investments? Have you worked with mortgages? Those things are an adjacency. So then you can go into your next job with some skills that you've learned, some connections that you have, and that will help you succeed. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Another thing is, so my videographer, the guy who does our videos, our podcasts, you know, the way we even first came into contact was the fact that he approached me for business advice because he was kind of looking for a side hustle, and he knows I'm very much about people having a side hustle and having different streams of income and doing. I mean, you have your main job, you should have different things on the side as well. And he had this idea of having a small business where, like, an app or something like that, and people would order stuff and you would go and deliver. So somebody wants something from Tesco, they want a jug of milk, and they'll come on the app and say, I want a jug of milk.
Yeah.
You know? So I said to him, how are you going to fulfill these orders? I mean, it's 2 a.m. Somebody post something on the app, they want this, milk, £2 something. Are you going to leave your bed at 2 a.m. and go deliver? Because he said, oh no, initially it was him and his wife. I was like, you're going to be tired.
Yeah.
You're going to be exhausted, because the business model, and a lot of business, the reason I talk about this point is that you can be doing a business, there's a lot of activity, but there's no benefit. There's no, there's minimal impact. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of sweat, a lot of whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like being on a treadmill. Yeah. You haven't moved forward. Yeah. You've got nothing to show for it. Tell us a bit about that. What your thoughts about that?
Yeah. That is true. That is very true. And you were asking about validation and going back to this topic and what you are saying now, in 1905 there was an experiment by Rutherford on how how atoms move. And in those days, they had what you call the plum pudding. So model. So they thought that the atom was just a thing, and you had electrons all everywhere. Rutherford fired through some. I'll tell you what I'm coming to this, but he fired some through particles through a gold foil. And he realized that some of the particles went straight through the foil. Some of them hit the foil and came back. Some of them hit the foil and went a different way. So, and that brings you to validation. Sometimes you do something, you try it out, it fails, it bounces back to you, okay? And you basically have to find something else to do, okay? So with your guy, obviously, delivering a jug of milk and stuff, that's not going to work. Obviously, it's going to bounce back to you because you're going to struggle. But there are times when the thing can bounce and go in a different way. My friend Max McKeown, who wrote the book called The Strategy Book, he said every success is necessary adaptation. Everyone who succeeds is good at adapting.
Okay.
Do you understand? So with your guy with the app, okay, now you obviously came to see you as a seasoned guy. We talked about validation earlier. A seasoned guy who tries to advise him and say, look, actually, this is not going to work. Okay, that won't work. What can work? Do you understand? And so you're going off the Rutherford way. You're going off into different tangents. But it's because that you actually speaking to a seasoned advisor, looking at the markets and looking at what I could do. That's not going to work. Obviously, you're not going to go around chuckling. So, but what can I do?
Your milk is here. No, carry it back.
Yeah, carry a jug of milk across the road. So when it's a jug of milk, that's clearly going to work. So, but what can I do that is similar to that?
And it's scalable.
It's scalable and have adjacency.
Yeah.
You know, because from my experience and probably from yours as well, the reason why we fall into pain is because you're running around trying to do the hustling.
Yeah.
For me, it's the hustling that got me into the pain.
Okay.
It's the hustling that got me into the pornography because I felt so tired, so struggled. My wife was already in bed and I had to satisfy myself, so pornography. It's the hustling that got me into the epilepsy. I was tired, I was stressed, I was not looking after myself properly. So obviously my health paid for it. It was so that's another kind of pain. It was my struggling and my hustling that got me into the other pain where people are saying to you, this is not going to work, and you're getting discouraged. So that hustling, you're right, it doesn't help. Particularly when you keep on going on the same treadmill over and over and over and over and over. You're not getting advice from people. You're not looking at your adjacency. You're not looking at your honeymoon period. Those things you're bound to fail. And sometimes the failure is our fault. It is our fault.
So you talk about value adding, and my understanding of value adding is that you've got to look at the customer. Okay, so for instance, we started this podcast, like I said, and we haven't quite figured it out yet. I'll raise my hand up and say we haven't quite figured it out. I'm not a trained journalist. I work in the city, but I'm kind of trying to learn and I'm trying to figure out, what people want. Even in terms of content, it's quite, because sometimes the episodes that you think are going to do well, are the ones that have, seemingly like people just are not interested. People just switch off. And the reason I ask this question is that as an entrepreneur, you can have this idea of coming up with a shaving stick that does some magical stuff. But the question is, do people want shaving sticks? Because we do this podcast, okay, like I said, I don't know what people, I'm still trying to figure out what the people out there want to hear, and I will adapt. Much as I have an idea of what the direction on which things want to go, I think it's more viable to adapt to what people want to hear rather than to stick to this 10 things that I'm going to do or 10 questions I'm going to ask in every podcast, to every podcast guest, which probably doesn't, interest people. You might be the best baker, baking cakes, but the question is, do people want your cakes? But it's important to target, to your audience.
Yeah, so I call that tangibility. Okay, and that's my second book I'm writing now. That's what it's about. So tangibility means, how do people connect with your brand? How do people connect with your podcast? How do people connect with your shop? How do people connect? Every podcast, every show, every business, every online business gives off a vibe, gives off an energy. Okay, everyone does. Okay, if you enter someone's home, you can tell straight away. There's something in the home that doesn't feel quite right. You know, we all have it. You know, and I call that tangibility. Tangibility is how people connect with your bike. Tangibility is made up of three things. Okay, the first thing is your customer agility. How well do you know what your customers want? Okay. The second thing is collaboration. How are you collaborating within your team and with other people to figure out how people can connect with you? And the third thing is community. You need to build a community around a community. If you don't have any of these three things, your tangibility will go. Okay, so you need to first thing figure out what your customers want. You have to be agile, and that comes from people on the ground. Okay, so in your case, it comes from people listening to your podcast. You always have a core people of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people listening to the podcast. So it's regular feedback, ringing them up and saying, "Oh, Stephen or Kweku or whatever, what do you think about the podcast?" I mean, someone like Charles is great at that, giving you feedback. What do you think about the podcast? What can be arranged? What can I do better? What kind of audience do you think I can serve? So that's the customer agility. You are continually adapting yourself to find out what the customer needs and where you can obviously make a difference. But it doesn't stop there. You have to move to the collaboration aspects. So that means that you're collaborating with other podcasters. Okay, you go on other podcasters' shows. Okay, so most of the podcasts I've been on, the podcasters have also been on other podcasts. Because when you go to somebody's podcast and you're a guest, you learn things that you didn't know before. Okay, so the more podcasts you go on as a guest, the more you figure out what they're doing. Same as a business. If you are in the corner shop business, and that's one thing Africans don't do very well, we don't collaborate. Okay. And I always say this about musicians that have done well over the years. I mean, one of my favorite bands is called Coldplay. I mean, Coldplay, if you look at the way they've been successful, Madonna is one of them, Elton John. They have all these three things in place. Okay, they figure out what their customers want, so they are continually changing their music. Okay, Elton John's latest song he came up with is called Cold Hearts. Okay, and he collaborated with a woman called Dua Lipa. Dua Lipa is one of the biggest singers now. She's got like 50 million followers on Spotify. She sings pop music, and the millionaires love her. Now Elton John is in his 70s. People that are listening to his music are dying. They're going. you know. Yeah. So what can he do to stay relevant? He's humble enough to go and collaborate with a 21-year-old and do a song. It's called Cold Heart, and it's really brilliant. She sings it. She's changed the beats and people love it. My daughter knows Elton John because of Dua Lipa. Coldplay is the same. Okay, Coldplay collaborates with Stormzy. They collaborate with Chainsmokers. You know, Stormzy is the same. Stormzy is doing well because he collaborates with Shatawale. He collaborates with Ed Sheeran. Do you understand? So collaboration is crucial if you want people to connect with you, then you need to collaborate with other people. And the third thing I talk about is community. You need to build a community around your what you're doing, and that community are staunch fans of what you're doing.
So that's like subscribers.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a different way. So if you are a podcast, it's subscribers, but it's also your friends, your close friends, like in your case, it'll be people like Charles, the Motown guys, people like us, who are your community, and they go out and spread the word, and then subscribers as well. That's another level of this is second level of community. Okay, which you got. So these three things are things that you have to have in place. If you don't have those three things in place, you may succeed, but it won't last. And I got this from studying. For my second book, Chasing Permanence. I studied all these musicians over the whole. Madonna, like I said to you, Madonna, Coldplay, Elton John, Stormzy, who have done well, Beyonce, over the 30, 40 years they've been, and they have the same thing. They are agile, they're able to change music and change as they're going on.
Adapt,
all the time. And it means that even being humble to collaborate with people that are young, or whatever. They collaborate. Okay, so they like I said to you before, they get people to help them to sing with them and they collaborate. And the third thing is they all have a strong community. There are people that love Coldplay, people that love Madonna, and they follow them over the years. And those people are the ones that they're the core. And they form a community. And that happens with people that if you have a small business, you have a core people around you that continually come and buy, and those people need to be nurtured. And then from there you
engage with them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. The loneliness of an entrepreneur, we're just coming to a close in the next few minutes anyway, but my entrepreneurial journey has been very lonely, and oftentimes I'm kind of out on my own, and I'm made to feel that, here he goes on doing something else, here he goes on doing something else. But there's a reason why this is being done, right? And some people just don't get it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can feel very hurt. You can feel that, you're not being supported. You're kind of, because it's nice to see the effect when entrepreneurs are supported by people close to them. It's like a tailwind. It just kind of pushes you. It's like, no, go for it, do it. But not everybody has that support network. How do you deal with the loneliness of, if you are in that sort of state? How do you deal with that loneliness?
Yeah, two things. How I dealt with mine, and obviously how I should. Again, it goes back to your honeymoon period, which I keep coming on to all the time. Okay, so you as a person, do you really believe in your heart that this is what you meant to be doing? Are you self-aware? Do you have the necessary skills and capabilities and strengths within you? What's your identity? The second thing is, why am I doing this? Okay. And the third thing is, do I have a passion for this? Those are the things. When I would put a price, I say that continually all the time. Honeymoon phase is crucial, because when people come to you, and I call that green flag pain. Okay. Green flag pain is when people come to you and they don't like what you're doing, they don't support you, they don't believe in what you're doing. I call it green flag pain because when you get to traffic light and it's green, you keep going. Okay, that's what I call green flag pain. You keep going. Okay, so in places where you feel lonely, places where you feel like you're not being supported, if you have your honeymoon phase in place and you keep going, okay, you will eventually get to a point where people begin to see, oh, actually, this guy I'm supporting, he's actually beginning to do this. And it comes with the volume of work that you're doing. Okay, the more you do the work, and I talked about tangibility, and the more you work hard at getting people to connect with your brand, the people that don't support you will come to support you eventually, because they can see success. Some people will always support you when they see success. That's the way to the situation. Yeah. And that's why it's crucial to build, like I said to you, to build a community around what you're doing. I call it, and I actually got this idea from Ghana, actually. I call it find your fun. Okay, find your fun. So find your fun. I got that idea because when I was little, my mom used to get me to, we have these fans in Ghana that used to find the coal pots, and my mom used to get me to get a fan to find the coal pots, and I used to find the coal pot all the time, so the fire would burn. Okay, the more I found the coal pot, the more the fire would burn. Okay, now when the fire was okay, you could put the fan down and go and play. Okay, but I always forgot to put the fan where my mother wants it done.
Yeah.
And so when she went the next day to go and find the fan, the fan was not there. And she would scream at me, Stevie, you're so careless, blah, 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 blah. But that came an idea when I was writing the book. You have to find your fun. Find your fun means you need to find the people that support you, the people that are rooting for you, and stick with, and nurture them and look after them. Okay? So it means that you have to build those relationships. If you have, because no matter what, you're lonely, yes. When I started off, the people that were closest to me did not support me. But I had a friend called Kate Wright, who's English, who loved what I was doing. She really believed in me. I had a friend called Brian Martin. I had people like Charles and stuff who really believed in what I was doing. And when I felt low, there could be only 2 people or 3 people or 4 people, but they're always there. There are always people there that will support you what you're doing. And if you call them, and you should be able to take that tough love that they give you. Okay, if you're able to do that and find your fun, and you keep on producing and producing and producing, the success will come if you're doing it properly. And you've done all these things that I've talked about. I was looking back at Coldplay's albums, and I've studied each one. I mean, they've done several ones since they did one called Parachutes, which showed them to fame. They've done loads of albums. There's one called Ghost Stories that they did 4 or 5 years ago that didn't really do well. But some of them did extremely well, and some of them didn't do so well. But they produce the volume of work, isn't it? Sometimes, so it's the volume of episodes that you're producing. You have to produce episode. You produce episode after episode. Obviously, like you said, you are refining it. You're adapting it. You are looking at your audience. You're building a community. You're being agile. You're doing all these things, but you keep doing the work. You have to do the work. I'm lucky that my first book has done well. Yeah, but it could be my second book would do terrible. My third book, I do a newsletter.
On Thursdays, come on Thursdays.
Yeah, it goes out everything. You get it. Yeah. Some of them, I look at them. I did one last week. I put so much work into that newsletter. I think I call it Standing in the Dark. Only 40 people read it. Because I can see the people already in it. 40 people ready.
Okay.
I was like, I put in so much work. There's one I did the week before. I think I can't remember what I called it now. That was massive. I just sat at home, woke up in the morning, I just wrote it and posted it. I got thousands of people reading it. The one that I spent more time doing, nobody won. But Doesn't matter.
Just keep on.
Next Thursday, I'm going to do another one.
Okay.
And I get another one. And I get feedback on LinkedIn. I get feedback on Facebook. I get feedback from people like you and Charles telling me, okay, Steve, what you were there, I think you bear that in mind. You correct it.
Okay.
You build a community around it.
Okay.
You keep going and going and going and going. Refining, going. Refining, going. Collaborating. What are other people that are writing newsletters? What are they doing?
Okay.
You read other people's newsletters. You talk to them. Actually, I'm doing this thing. That's what's working. This is the niche market.
Okay.
But you have to put in the work and keep doing it. Okay.
Fantastic. I was going to ask you about branding. I don't know if you have time. I mean, the importance of branding, because there's value in a brand, and it takes a lot to build a brand, but you can easily lose everything in a flash. So you've got to stay true to the brand. Can you just tell us a bit about that as we wrap up?
Yes. So your brand, people don't realize that, but your brand is you. You are your brand. That's what people sometimes forget. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you whether you have the loveliest shop with the most beautiful products and you brand it nicely. The brand comes down to you, the person, okay? And the relationships that you build with the people, the tangibility comes down. I always say it comes down. And the vibe you're given with that brand, okay? So you can have a lovely. I mean, I've seen people have lovely logos. They've done lovely things. They've built a brand. But ultimately, the brand comes back to the entrepreneur. It comes back to the leader. Okay, if you don't build that relationships with people, and now increasingly now, before 20, 30, 45, 50 years ago, it didn't matter. Because people needed a thing. In Ghana, I remember when we were in Ghana, all we had was Piccadilly biscuits. You remember those biscuits that we had? Those little biscuits. Yeah. That's all we had. Yeah. So it didn't matter. They could produce it because now I went to Ghana last year, and now there's digestive on the market. There's there on the market. There's that on the market. There's that on the market. So now increasingly, it's getting difficult to differentiate between brands. Okay. The only thing that will differentiate you from another brand is your relationship that you build. That's what people want to. The value they're adding, and because a car can take from A to B. You can have a BMW, the Audi, and even now the cars like Kia and stuff. The differences between them are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. The brand. I mean, Charles, talking to Charles when he came in about the car that he got, and he had such a good service. The people went to great lengths to please him. They built a relationship with him. He knows them on first name basis. He loves them, and so guess what happens when his car crashes? He'll go back to the same. He'll go back there. Obviously, it helps that your product is a high product. It helps you have a good logo. It helps that your shop is clean. It helps that all these things are all crucial.
Basic things, yeah.
Yes, the basic things. I mean, it's like they say, Ron Seal says that it does what it says on the tin. You have to do what it says on your tin. If you're running a podcast, it should be a good podcast like you're doing now. Brilliant questions that you're asking me. You've been a wonderful host. The stuff, everything is good, but ultimately people will connect with you as a person. Increasingly so, now that there are 3 million podcasts on the market. A podcast is opening every 3 or 4 days. Somebody is starting a podcast. The difference between somebody looking at somebody else's podcast, of course the content is crucial. Of course the quality is crucial, but what people are connecting with is you, the podcaster. As a pharmacist, I've seen that. Okay, recently our pharmacy was awarded. I live in Plymouth. It's about 70 pharmacies in Plymouth. We had an award last week as the second best in the city. Why is that? Because I pummeled into the game. I know I'm black. Plymouth is 98% whites. Okay, so I pummeled it into the girls, and I lead by example by customer service. I know every customer's name. We have thousands of customers. I know their names. I know their kids' names. I go to great extents to make sure they get what they want. Okay, the basic service is give them a medication, put it in the bag, give it, and they go home. And you go beyond that. So I formed a brand of myself. People know that if they go to this pharmacy, they're going to get exceptional customer service. And they're going to do still going to do the best they can to get my medication for me. Even if it means bringing a doctor on my behalf, he'll do it. He'll make sure I get the best possible product, and more so, he shows that he cares for me as a person. That is what it is about. That's what the brand is about. It's about you, the person. It goes beyond, especially now.
Yeah, I mean, as we wrap up, and we really are wrapping up now. One of the things I think you talk about in the book, that you got to know who you are, and start where you are. I mean, I built a business, a global business, in pharmacy. Actually, you probably didn't know that. I'm actually in the pharmacy.
I didn't.
And I sit in meetings and people are asking which pharmaceutical which university did you go to study pharmacy? Because I know all the terms, I know all the lingo and everything, but I've never been to pharmaceutical school. But then I own a pharmaceutical marketing business, global pharmaceutical marketing business, and that's just like a side hustle, So you've got to kind of start where you are, know who you are, and be authentic.
Yes.
Like I said,
100%.
people as well also have ideas, and I'm looking for capital, I'm looking for this. Start where you are. I built my business with no debt, and it was simply by virtue of the fact that I knew a lot of people. I had contacts, I had connections, and I was able to bring the relevant parties together, and that's how I built my business. So you basically got to start where you are, use what skill sets you have, and try and make it work.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, Stephen, you've been a fantastic guest,
Wonderful.
and it's a shame we have to bring this to a close. We have a tradition on this podcast where we give guests the opportunity to dedicate or say thank you to any one or any group of people of their choice. So, who would you like to dedicate this episode to?
This is an easy question because I'll dedicate it to my wife.
Okay.
She stood by me through thick and thin. Through the hard times that we went through, she stuck by me. She could easily have walked out. I could not blame her, but she stuck by me. And my daughter, who is an incredible wise girl she's only 17 years old, incredibly wise, and she won the National Entrepreneur Award last year.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, for enterprise. So I'm incredibly proud of her. So the two people I like to dedicate to.
Okay. So, as a gesture of his support for our podcast, our award-winning author Stephen has donated 5 copies of his book, Pay the Price, and these will go to the first 5 people who have subscribed and comment in the comment section below. If you don't get the book, you can get it on Amazon and in Waterstones and other places. But we have 5 free copies going to the first 5 people who comment and have subscribed. And I'd also like you to subscribe to Stephen's newsletter. How can they subscribe to that? We'll put it in the comment section.
Go on my website,
Yeah.
www.stephenadjei.com.
Yeah.
And then obviously you can put it on there.
Okay.
On your notes as well.
Fantastic. And there's one person, Camilla Addison, all the way from Queens, New York. I think I'm going to reserve one of these books for you. So, I would also like to say a very big thank you to Charles Latte, who's been very supportive and actually made this interview possible. And also, I'd like to dedicate this podcast to Michael and Pamela Zomilo, who are great entrepreneurs, people
brilliant.
that I look up to greatly.
Yeah.
And also a guy I met on the train the other day. He's called a Nigerian guy. He's a student here, but he's been very helpful. He gave us some good suggestions for our podcast. He's called Folashade Bolahan.
Oh, okay.
So Folashade, this is for you. And finally for Kofi Bafoboni for your support. Thank you all very much. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, I'd like you to subscribe, comment, share, and by all means, watch again next week. Stephen,
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's been wonderful. Thank you.